Cheers, everybody. Welcome to Hopefully Here. My name is Hope, and as always, I'm super stoked to have you. Today, as you can see, it's a Spindrift, mojito. By far, the best flavored Spindrift, but I just love it. It's like the most elite flavored sparkling water. I love Spindrift so much. Okay, today is mid-year freakout tag because we're almost at the midway point. And there are a lot of new subscribers here, so I thought maybe this would be a good way for you to get to know me and my reading a little bit, and for me to get to know you because you can tell me what your answers to these questions would be in the comments below. I would obviously love to hear from you. This tag was created a long time ago, I think by a girl named Allie, and I will link her channel below. It's a pretty old video now, I think it's about 7 years old, but you know, obviously kudos to the original creator of this content tag, and I think that's who it was. That's who I have seen people say created this tag, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the creator. So, mid-year freakout tag. So far my reading has gone fairly okay. It's been slumpy for a lot of the year, I'll be honest, and I keep trying to find ways to get out of it, and I'll go through phases where I think I've gotten through and then it comes back. So my reading has been okay. It hasn't been stellar, but it hasn't been terrible. I've read a few really great books. If you're here for a while, you know 5-star books they do not come very commonly to me. I am very particular about my 5-star books, but also I do not generally rate the books that I read. It's just level of enjoyment for me. However, when a book is a 5-star, I do acknowledge that it is like an incredible book. And so I've had a few of those, but not too many. And we're going to talk about a couple of them because they will answer some of these questions. I'm going to grab my phone so I can have my story graph open, just in case I need to reference it for anything. So to date, I have read 103 books and just under 40,000 pages. I would say that's pretty decent. I imagine my reading is going to slow down in the second half of the year because my glasses are filthy. I have just started a job, which means obviously not as much time, but let's get into it. Start on a high. Best book of the year so far. I have 2 for these. The first is a book that I just finished reading, and that is Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck. It just won the International Booker. It follows a couple who have a very large age difference, and it's happening at the time that the Berlin Wall is falling. I loved it. I think the writing was incredible. The storytelling was incredible. I talk about it in a lot more detail in my International Booker video, but I just positively loved it. And the other favorite book of the year is Forbidden Notebook by Albin de Cespedes. This is actually the first book that I read on the year, and I have a whole video on it as well. Also just incredible. I think that the way the story is told and how it made me feel, it just made me feel so claustrophobic. I think that is such a nod of appreciation to the author, being able to create that feeling in its reader. Absolutely adore both those books. So far, I think that they are 2 of the standouts on the year for me. Best sequel of 2024. I actually have 2. So Moon of the Turning Leaves by Wobgensig Rice, which is part of the White Sky saga, I think is what it is. I believe it's just a duology. I read it this year, and it is a sequel to Moon of the Crusted Snow, and it is a kind of post-apocalyptic type story where you're following a group of Native Canadians who live in Ontario, and they have to start traveling south because their resources are dwindling as there's no electricity, so they're just kind of trying to get by on the land, and they've discovered that they need to move because they're not going to be able to support themselves anymore, and it is absolutely brilliant. I loved it so much. And my other one is, I'm going to count because it's a reread, and that is The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. I love the series. I just love this series so very much, and I reread it, and it is still absolutely spectacular. So those are the 2 for question number 2. Question number 3 is a new release that I haven't read yet, but I really need to get to. And I again have a few different ones for this. I want to read Funny Story by Emily Henry. I haven't gotten to that one yet, but I've been on hold for a long time at the library on that one. I'd like to read The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley, I believe is their name. Yes, I would like to read Evenings and Weekends by Ocean McKenna, and The Wren in the Holly Library by K.A. Lind. So those are 4 already released books that I would really like to get to. They kind of are all over the place in terms of genre, but that is also how I read. I read all over the place, but I'm very excited. And most of these books I've heard really great things about. The one I haven't heard too many people talk about, because I think it's still fairly new, is the Holly, what is it called? The Wren in the Holly Library. But there is a edition of this book at Barnes & Noble that is absolutely beautiful, and I'm hoping I really like it, because I would love to add that book to my collection, but I don't want to buy it unless I really love the book. We'll see how it goes, but those are definitely ones that are on my radar. They're already on my library holds. I'm just waiting for them to come in. Number 4, most anticipated in the second half of the year. 2 authors that I absolutely adore are releasing books. Deborah Harkness is releasing her 5th book in the History of Witches series, and Elif Shafak is releasing a book, oh, I don't remember what it's called anymore, but this is what the book is. And they're 2 books that I am very excited about. I've pre-ordered the Deborah Harkness book, and I imagine the Elif Shafak book I will get as soon as I can get my little paws on it. Question number 5, biggest disappointment of the year. And I'm gonna kind of maybe give an unpopular opinion for this one, but I'm actually gonna put the Women's Prize for Fiction long list and short list as my biggest disappointment. Not because I didn't have some fairly enjoyable reads, but because overall I found the list to be quite lacking in like that superstar book, the book that you are really compelled to read and really compelled to recommend and just know it's going to be the winner. For me, I appreciate who won the prize, but for me, my overall disappointment, I went into reading because I did read most of the long list, I went into reading that with such high expectations, and I really didn't find that anything truly met what I wanted out of the Women's Prize, particularly because that one last year, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, I adored so very much. So I know that this is probably an unpopular opinion. I know a lot of people absolutely loved the list this year. I was just not someone who fell in love with anything I enjoyed, but didn't fall in love. So it's not like anything was bad, but I was a little disappointed. Number 6 is biggest surprise of the year. And again, did I write down 2 books for this? I did, 2 books for this. First is Anita Demont Laughs Last by Xochitl Gonzalez. I think this book is positively brilliant. More people need to read it. More people need to be talking about it. It is one of my favorite books of the year. It didn't get put into the answer for question number 1 because I wanted to put it here. I went into this with expectations of wanting to enjoy it, but my level of enjoyment so far superseded what I was expecting that it just has to be the answer to this question. It's so good. The writing is so good. The characters are good. There's a little bit of magical realism. Absolutely loved it. If you haven't looked into it, I highly recommend it. And another book that I want to talk about, it's a really short little book, which is why it surprises me how much I enjoyed it, and that is The English Understandable by Helen DeWitt. And it's a tiny little thriller book. I don't even know how to describe it without giving anything away because of how short it is, but it is such an enjoyable read, and you're following a girl whose parents they disappear, but it's not super maliciously. I don't want to give anything away, but I have Helen DeWitt's other book, The Last Samurai or something like that, on my TBR, and it is a chunkster. Whereas this one I think was maybe 100 pages, and it's it looks like a funny book, but it's so good and was very surprising. Really enjoyed it. If you're looking for just a really quick read to take to the beach with you, literally it could be a one-sitting book. I would definitely recommend maybe checking that one out. Okay, number 7 is favorite new author. Now, I don't know if I'm going to consider her a favorite, but she is somebody who I have recently read 2 of her books and really enjoyed them, and that is Karis Davies. I read Clear by her, and it's so good. It follows a man who is supposed to go to an island where there's only one person left, and his job is to evict this man, and you're following him, you're following the man who's supposed to evict, and you're following the evictor's wife and how it all comes together. And it was such a well done and well thought out story. It again is a fairly short book. It's historical, but it doesn't lean so heavily into that. Well, maybe it does. Either way, absolutely brilliant. And then I just finished her book West, which is another historical fiction where you're following a girl whose father feels this call to go west because he wants to discover these animals. It's such a weird premise, but her writing just evokes so much atmosphere and environment and emotion, and her characters bring so much to the story. I absolutely adored her writing. First time I've ever read by her, and she is somebody I'm going to continue to check out her backlist and look forward to in the future. I don't know if she's going to be an all-time favorite, but she's somebody that I have discovered this year and have really, really enjoyed. So number 8 is newest fictional crush, and number 9 is new favorite character. I don't really have an answer to those questions. I don't feel like I read books that generally kind of evoke that type of emotion in terms of fictional crush and favorite character. So I'm gonna leave those, but please let me know fictional crush and favorite new character that you've discovered this year, because who knows, maybe I'll find somebody that I think is worth my time and need to check out. Or maybe I'll be like, oh yeah, no, I read that book. I can totally see why you would think that. So for sure, let me know in the comments below. Number 10 is book that made me cry. Okay, full disclosure, I'm not really a crier. It would take a lot to get that out of me. So books that I think definitely trigger some emotion. One is Minor Detail by Adania Shibli. I think that book, which looks at the story of a girl in Palestine and an Israeli soldier, is obviously heartbreaking. It's, again, seems to be the theme. It's a fairly short little book, but I think is so current with what is happening in the world right now, and the writing was beautiful. Definitely kind of could see leans in the sadder direction. And also I read the graphic novel Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which is heartbreaking. It's a graphic novel covering the time of Art Spiegelman's father in his concentration camps, and it's so good. It won, what did it win? It won a prize, and I can't remember which one, but I'm not a girl who particularly gravitates toward graphic novels, but this was one that I really felt I needed to find the time to read, and I'm so glad I did. Heartbreaking, obviously, but brilliant at the same time. Okay, a book that made me happy. Opposite ends of the spectrum. So again, these aren't books that like made me laugh or anything, but they were books that came at the right time that I enjoyed way more than I thought I was going to, and so I figured deserve some credit. One is the Reaper duology by Rin Shipeko, which was the first book particularly, which is Silver Under Nightfall. I had such a good time reading this book. It's super ridiculous. It's about a vampire killer falling in love with vampires. Essentially, it's very weird. There's a lot of, politics around the world. The world kind of reminded me a lot of the world that Sarah J. Maas has created in her Court of Thorn and Roses series, because there were a lot of different like night court and day court type things, but I had a really great time reading it. And the other one, which was even more surprising, was Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I actually really enjoyed my reading experience of this book. I enjoyed the characters and the world. I find Cassandra Clare can write very readable books, very page-turning books, and this was one of those experiences for me. I believe it's her first adult novel, but when I was reading her YA stuff, I haven't enjoyed all of her YA, but I've definitely enjoyed a couple of her series. They were just so compelling. You just wanted to keep flipping the page, and she was able to achieve that in this for me. It's a fantasy. It follows a set of boys who grow up together, and the one boy has to kind of pretend to be the prince in certain situations if things are too dangerous. Essentially, his life is dedicated to protecting him, but he also thinks I'll probably have to die for him at some point because he's put into kind of dangerous situations occasionally, but they're actually friends, and it's very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. So happy, maybe not the right word, but super enjoyable and exactly what I needed when I read it. Number 12 is Most Beautiful Book I have acquired this year. I would say for sure I purchased the Bone Season, their new editions. I think they're absolutely beautiful. I don't buy a ton of books. And I would say looking at my shelves, yeah, those are definitely the ones that would have to take the #1 spot, would be those books. I think they're so pretty. And then books I need to read by the end of the year. So I have a few plans. One is to follow the Giller Prize, which is a Canadian literary award. One is obviously the Booker Prize. I'd like to read those. And I have my big book summer TBR hopefuls that I would obviously like to get through. So definitely some books that are in my future. Two, the prize books, obviously I don't know what they will be, so I can't name them. And the big book summer books, I have a whole video on. But those I think are going to be kind of priorities at certain times of the year over the next few months. And I'm really, really looking forward to them. Also, the couple of new releases I talked about with Deborah Harkness and Elif Shafak, would really like to get to those. Yeah, nothing like super pressing, but definitely some books that are on the radar that I would like to get to before the end of the year. And then the final question is favorite book community member. I don't necessarily have a favorite. I go through phases with people where I watch everything that they put out, and then I get a little bit more selective about videos because sometimes you start to learn the videos that you like and the videos you don't like. For instance, I don't love watching anticipated release videos because I find a lot of it is just reading the synopsis off the book, and that for me isn't the most enjoyable watching experience. I was like that in university. Like if a teacher's lecture was literally just going to be reading from a textbook, I'm like, I'd rather stay home and just read the textbook on my own. You know what I mean? But somebody who I have seen a couple of their videos before, but had never really established a faithful following of, is Gavin at Gavin Reads a Lot, and I just subscribed to him, and I'm actually really, really enjoying his content right now. I think he's funny and clever and witty, and I know that he doesn't read everything the same, like we don't read a lot of the same genres, but sometimes just the way they create content is amusing, so I'm really enjoying him. Who else do I look forward to? I also just started following Olivia's Catastrophe. I've only watched a couple of her videos, but I very much have enjoyed her content. I don't know. I'm not too picky. I watch almost anybody who shows up. If their video looks interesting, I watch it, and we go from there. Simon from Savage Reads obviously is one of my favorites. I think he's brilliant. Jen Campbell, I watch most of her videos. She's slowed down a little bit lately because she's just had a kid, but really enjoy her content as well. Yeah, those I would say top my list. But let me know who your favorites are, because it's always nice to discover, particularly if you have some smaller booktubers. It's like me, obviously small. It's always nice to kind of get a train going on checking out smaller booktubers, because they're also doing great content, and it's hard to get yourself into the algorithm sometimes. But yeah, that is my mid-year freakout tag. Like I said, I've had a fairly decent year. It's just been kind of weird because I feel like I've been fighting a bit of a reading slump for ages, and I'm ready for it to go. Who knows? Maybe second half of the year will push me out a bit. But I will write the questions in the description box below. I will link to who I believe is the original content creator of this tag, and I hope you all have brilliant days. If you do your own mid-year freakout tag and you have a video, I don't know, can you leave links in comments? I don't know if you can, but if you can't, say, hey, I also have a video, and you should be able to see your handle or something like that. It'll all sort itself out. But cheers, everybody. I hope your day is spectacular. I am going to get ready to go to work. Bye.